Resident Evil 7! No, wait. Resident Evil 7. Oh, that's fucking nice. After the lukewarm reception to Resident Evil 6, Capcom is really trying hard to recapture the horror of the original games, as the big complaint with 6 was that it was too actiony and wasn't scary. With 7, they've gone back to the drawing board and completely refocused the series on horror. The implication from the gameplay so far is that you are a mostly defenseless character who hides and avoids combat. The adversaries are highly capable and must be avoided to succeed in the game. This is how the horror is achieved. It's scary when a conflict occurs because your character is so incapable in combat. This style has successfully been implemented in many horror games. The problem is, Resident Evil has always been a blend of action and horror. Can Resident Evil 7 be an effective sequel if it forgoes the action and departs so radically from its roots? In the Star Wars episode of Kirby Ferguson's Everything is a Remix series, he argues that stories are a balance of the familiar and the novel. Familiar ideas are important because people love the familiar. Novel ideas are riskier but often more impactful and memorable. I think this concept is even more relevant when applied to a franchise. An ideal sequel hits the perfect balance of both ideas that are familiar to earlier entries in the franchise and novel ideas that take the franchise in new directions. Novel ideas are important because they can attract new audiences and refresh interest with existing fans. Familiar ideas are necessary though, as they are the soul of the franchise, and they often ground the novel ideas. With a franchise though, it's important to note that novel ideas become familiar over time. So what are the familiar ideas that make up the Resident Evil franchise? Big concepts like zombies and monsters, inventory management, health management, firearms and combat, gore, puzzles, exploration, non-linear gameplay, isolated environments, and cinematic presentation. Now, breaking down what makes Resident Evil a survival horror game, some of those familiar concepts stick out as essential. If a lot of them are removed, then the survival horror flavor might be jeopardized. Just look at RE6. A lot of the gameplay systems changed, and it didn't feel like a survival horror game at all. And a lot of people felt it focused too much on the action. But action itself wasn't the problem with Resident Evil 6, as action is one of the most familiar elements of Resident Evil. It didn't feel like a true Resident Evil game because it removed so many of those other essential familiar elements, like inventory management, isolation, exploration and non-linearity, and limiting controls. Resident Evil 6 was half of a Resident Evil game, the action without the horror. So, back to Resident Evil 7. In order for Resident Evil 7 to be an effective sequel, it will have to balance its novel ideas with the franchise's most important familiar ones. A blend of action and horror is ideal. And although it does appear to have less action than a normal Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 7 does still have guns and combat in it, according to recent interviews. When asked how Resident Evil 7 compares to its horror game contemporaries, like first-person horror games Amnesia and Outlast, Nakanishi said both are great experiences, but they left him feeling frustrated. He wanted to have a weapon, to feel powerful enough to strike back, he said. Resident Evil 7's playable character will have the means to fend off his or her foes. Recent ESRB leaks seem to further allude that combat is in the game, stating Ethan will be equipped with pistols, shotguns, flamethrowers, explosives, and chainsaws to kill mutant creatures. Looking at earlier sequels for reference, one fan favorite sticks out.
It's game time.
Resident Evil 4 is one of the best examples of the balance of the familiar and the novel. It stayed true to the franchise's focus on survival horror and action, while introducing novel ideas that reinforced those familiar concepts. Balance is what's important here. Would you play every Mario game if Nintendo never added new power-ups or interesting new mechanics for Mario? No, they'd be too familiar. You could just keep playing the originals. What about a Tetris game that, while still a puzzle game, didn't involve dropping blocks and line destruction? No, that'd be way too novel, and there'd be no point in it being a Tetris game. Now, one thing is for sure, Resident Evil 7 does seem like it's going to invoke one of the most important familiar concepts when it comes to Resident Evil games, the sense of mystery. When you first stumbled into the mansion in Resident Evil 1, you were just as lost as the characters. There was the fear of the unknown around every corner. It was before the audience knew everything about Umbrella and Wesker, all the viruses, and all the complicated plot points of Resident Evil. The lack of mystery might actually be the most important familiar idea that Resident Evil 6 was missing. So Resident Evil 7 appearing so different might actually be the best way to create a true Resident Evil game again. One that goes back to its roots. What's up guys, it's Max. Thanks for checking out my video, it really means a lot to me. Resident Evil is my favorite gaming franchise, so I was really excited to make this video and get it out there. Let me know what you guys think. I'm personally really excited for Resident Evil 7, but I know a lot of people are kind of worried about it, so let me know in the comments below your opinion on it. Yeah, Capcom is actually going to be showing new footage at TGS this week, so stay tuned. I'm planning on making more Resident Evil content in the future. If you like my stuff, be sure to check out my channel and subscribe. So yeah, like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, and I'll catch you guys later.